Hello everyone, my name is Diego Recalde and I'm an Android developer and analyst at Globant. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about how to improve the UI performance of your Android app. The first concept that we'll be looking at is how to reduce the app overdraw. But first, what is the overdraw exactly? Well, the overdraw is the system's drawing a pixel on the screen multiple times on a single frame of rendering. For example, if you have a bunch of cars stuck on the UI, each car is going to be hiding a portion of the one below it. However, the system still needs to draw this hidden portion on screen because it does it based on the painter's algorithm, which is from back to front order. On the right image below, we're going to be seeing an example of the painter's algorithm, which is going to be drawing on screen a couple of mountains, then it's going to be putting a layer of grass on top of the mountains, and then a layer of trees on top of this grass. This is what is known as the painter's algorithm, but this represents an issue on our Android apps. But how do we see it exactly on our app? Well, this is very easily. We can just enable a tool on our developer options. By enabling the GPU overdraw tool, we are going to be seeing a layer of colors on top of our screen that are going to represent the different level of overdraw that we have. For example, the blue color represents one level of overdraw, the green color represents two levels of overdraw, the pink color represents three levels of overdraw, and the red color is going to represent four or more levels of overdraw. Before going forward with the overdraw, I'm going to mention another tool that it is very important to take a look at. That is going to be the GPU draw speed, and going to help us to recognize how fast our UI is being drawn on a screen. This not only help us to recognize some possible overdraw issues, but also some memory or processing issues that we may have when we see that our animation are getting kind of jumps on it, or screen is getting freeze sometimes when the user do some actions on it. So this specific tool help us to see how fast our UI is being rendered, and every vertical bar is going to represent each frame that we have on the app, and its head is going to be representing the time or how fast it took to draw in milliseconds. The green horizontal line that we have here is going to represent like kind of the limit that we have to be able to render on a screen, which is 16 milliseconds. And if we want to get a fluid app that we get a render speed of 60 frames per second, we want that our vertical bars are all below those 16 milliseconds. Um, the vertical bar that are above that limit, or that horizontal green line, are going to be represented on a screen by a wider bar, and also a less transparent color are the ones that, contrary to the ones that are below the 60 milliseconds limit. Okay, now we have seen like a couple of tools and what is exactly the overdraw, but how do we fix it? There are three possible ways that we have to tackle this issue. The first one is to remove unnecessary backgrounds. The second one is by flattening the layer hierarchy, and the third one is the reducing the transparency, which I'm not going to cover on this presentation. On the image to the right, we see a first screen that has a lot of overdraw, and then after applying these techniques, we are going to be seeing a screen that has little or none overdraw at all on screen. Okay, but let's go to the practice. How does this look like in the code? I'm going to be showing you here uh, an example, a sample app that is going to be having the UI like the one on the presentation, and we are going to be seeing that this is a list that has some of my global friends on it, that has an avatar, a title, and a little description. So the main activity is going to have the recycler view, which is this one over here, and the every item is going to be represented by this layout on the adapter. So let's look at this layout first. We have a linear layout that has a background color white, a white background color. We have an image view that has also a background color, and inside this linear layout we have another linear layout. This kind of start giving us a code smell about the layout hierarchy, which we are going to be seeing next. inside this linear layout, we are going to have a relative layout that only has a text view. This relative layout also has a white background, and over here on the same linear layout that contains this relative, there is a text view that has a white background. Let's check over here to the main activity. We have a constraint layout that has a white background, and we have a recycler view that also has a white background. We see a lot of unnecessary backgrounds here, but first we are going to be looking at this with the tool. So what we're going to do is go into the developer options, and we are going to enable the overdraw, the GPU overdraw. And what we are going to see on our app is that it is full of red and pink colors, right? So this means that we have a lot of overdraw issues in here. And I was like getting forward a little, but getting back to the techniques, the first technique that we were looking at is removing unnecessary backgrounds. So what we are going to do first is to remove all of these backgrounds that we see here, just to see how it improves. We are going to be removing this one as well. Upon executing the app, what we are going to see here is that the overdraw got better, but there are still some issues on screen. The first one that I noticed is that at the top, the action bar still has a pink color on the UI. And there are some avatars that are missing, because if you saw before, we had an avatar, and for those friends or those Glovers that doesn't have an avatar, uh, there was a blue color being shown. So as you remember, the color that was here, it was the primary color of this app, but if we put it back again, we are going to be increasing the level of overdraw on the avatar, which it was blue, now is green. So let's remove this for a moment, and we will get back to this once we solve the overdraw that we have first at the top on the action bar. Um, we have removed every background that it has, but still it's showing me some um, overdraw at the top of the screen. Why is that? Well, if you didn't know, the activities normally are created based on the theme of your app, and this theme normally has this primary color, a secondary color, and a tier one that you put on the default like theme. And by default, every activity takes this unless you tell him not to do it. So what we're going to do is going to the main activity, and after the set content view, what we are going to do is to remove from the window this background, so we don't have this issue on the action bar that on this case we are not controlling. So what we're going to do is set the background all to null, and this will remove our default theme at all for this activity. So let's execute again and see how it looks. Okay, this is weird because the app got worse. And if I try to scroll on it, we are going to be some rendering issues as well. Why is that? Well, the good thing is that at the top, we reduce the overdraw from being pink to green. But we got the list below with render issues. This is because we have removed like every background, including the one on the theme. So we don't have a canvas or something to actually draw or pieces of text and or the rest of the app basically on a screen. So as we need only in this piece below the action bar, I mean, to be able to see the content, we're going to be here in this activity main, and we are going to be adding the background only to the recycler view. Let's see how it looks now. Okay, that's good. Upon scrolling, we see that there are no issues anymore, but we are still missing the avatar that we have before. So let's get back to it. As we saw before, if we added the background here, we're going to be creating overdraw issues. We are going to do is going to do it by code and go to the adapter for this. Basically, what we are going to do is ask if our friend has no avatar. And if that is the case, what we're going to do is put the avatar as image resource, the color that we had on the XML. However, as we want to uh, keep this overdraw level on the screen, if the user has, or my friend has, an image or an avatar, we are going to be setting this avatar instead. So when we execute the app, we are going to be looking at an avatar that has a blue level of overdraw, and on the other ones that doesn't have an avatar, we're going to see the plain color without like a pink or red color, because we are putting one or the other on the screen. So if we get back to the GPU overdraw, we turn it off, we are going to see that our app looks exactly the same, but we have reduced the overdraw level on it. Okay, let's get back to the presentation, and now we are going to be talking about the layout hierarchy. The layout hierarchy, how do I know that I'm doing it right? The constraint layout is your best friend, and I have spoken. And this is something that whoever has seen the Mandalorian will understand. But basically, the constraint layout is what is going to help you mostly with the layout hierarchy issues. The constraint layout is something very powerful. If you haven't used it yet, please start using it, because it is something that it will help you a lot with the performance of your UI. Before we continue talking about it, we're going to have also some diagnosis tools that are going to help us to with not only with the layout hierarchy, but also with some issues that we may have as processing, like processing or memory issues. Some of them are the systray or the Perfetto tools that are going to have a system trace that are going to be basically what the device is doing, or how my app is impacting the system while it's being executed. The profile GPU rendering tool, which is the one we saw before about the draw speed, the lint, and the layout inspector, which is for this scenario about the flattening the layout hierarchy, the one that we are going to be using to check on our UI. I mean, we can see the XML, but this, by executing the layout inspector, we are going to see as the right image a view tree, and each element represented for with each of the views that we have on the screen. And we can see here, we have here a linear layout, and inside we have a frame layout. But inside the frame layout, we have a nested scroll view, a linear layout, and a lot of other layouts below it. And this is built in a way that doesn't use a recycler view, which we will be normally using like for a view like this, where we have several things on the screen and we are able to scroll, but also this will help us with the reuse. But get it back to the layout hierarchy. This layout hierarchy over here is very bad, and the way that we can improve it is by changing the layouts or using different components. On this scenario, we could use the recycler as I mentioned before, but also using a content constraint layout will help us a lot with this. So consider start using the constraint layout if you are not using it yet. I want to make a special mention to the view stop, and the merge and include tags, which are great tools. Or, well, in the case of the view stuff, it's a type of view that helps you with the creation of unnecessary views on screen if they are not needed, while the merge and include tags help us to reuse some views that we may have. As the link below image that we have here is telling me that the frame layout can be replaced by the merge tag. And this is something that we have to take a look at when we want to reuse and not include like another piece of layout if it is not really necessary, depending of the view that we are building, or how are we putting a layout inside another one if we are reusing them. Okay, let's go back to the code. And this time what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be resetting this branch. I'm going to be switching to the branch that already fixed the layout hierarchy, and we are going to be looking at the differences. Um, on the scenario for the main activity, I will mention that this is not the best case that we may have, because we can have only the recycler view in this view or in this layout. because we don't need anything else. If we were needing some more things like show on the screen besides the recycler view, then it would be a good idea to put it inside a constraint layout. But this can be just the recycler view, and we will be improving a little the layout hierarchy for this view. However, for the item that we had on the adapter. You saw before that we have a linear layout, and inside there was an image view, and then another linear layout with a relative layout inside, and then inside of it there was a text view. What we had done here is removing completely the linear layout, the parent, and put a constraint layout instead. What we did was conserve the same elements that we had on the screen, but we added some constraints in here to be able to have the same layout as we had before. So I'm going to execute this just for you to see it. And then we are going to be checking the overdraw, that we are still having low levels of overdraw on our app. So here we see that the screen is looking exactly the same. We are going to be activating the overdraw tool, and we still have good levels of overdraw on our app. So what we did here was flattening the layout hierarchy and improving the overdraw level that we had before. And again, this other layout can be replaced by just a single recycler view. So you keep in mind that this can be improved even further. So this is what I had for you today to share. I have a GitHub with this sample app that you can take a look at it on this GitHub. Please feel free to fork it, to download it, to play around with it. There are also some other tools or courses that we have here on the GitHub that can help you to dig into those topics a little further. And so take a look at it, make these code labs. There are a lot of documentation and courses. The course from Google, it is free and it is on Udacity. It is very good for performance overall on the app, starting with the UI performance stuff. And that's it from my side. Thank you, everyone.